Welcome to CivilNet. My guest is Dr. Aprahamian. She's a nuclear physicist and director of the Alikhanyan National Science Laboratory in Armenia. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Aprahamian.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a shared pleasure. So you are also a Freimann professor of physics at Notre in the US. You have experience in science and knowledge both in Armenia and in the US institutions. How would you describe the main difference between the two?
I would say that the structure part in Armenia is very different. Actually, since I was a member of the Science Advisory Board for Alikhanyan over 10 years ago, I proposed this idea of divisions and groups and how people can work together. But I would say that in Armenia, there's very little knowledge of who is doing what. So this internal communication is very different. And also the way of thinking about students, graduate students, is very different. I think the age of I sit on the top mountain and expect people to come to work with me is over. That was 100 years ago. And now I think it's our job, whether we're here or in the US or in Armenia, we have to capture the imagination of the young people to come and work with us. And that's a problem I see in Armenia, that many scientists haven't grasped that idea that you have to go after the young people and convince them, bring their imagination to creating the future.
Well, you just highlighted one of the issues that Armenia has in terms of science and knowledge. And actually, this field have recently been under the spotlight here in Armenia. And the lack of development in that field is regrettable, because this is what we are missing. So for you, what are the major changes and challenges that the country is facing? And as a director of Yerevan Physics Institute, where should we start to change the situation?
Well, from all the statistics that I've seen, students in Armenia love sciences. They specifically love physics more than any place else. And actually, we have the largest per capita number of physicists compared to any other country. So something is broken between this high school and the career. And that broken part is when young people don't see the future. My experience for 32 years as a professor at an American university, I have seen how you capture. So young people don't want to come to a place that they think is dying. I have made the comment many times in Armenia here, how do you convince young people we're going to invent the future here when the roof is falling on their head? So you cannot do that. You have to show that there is future, there are exciting new projects, and we're doing that at Alikhanyan. We're now getting ready to apply for a number of European Horizon proposals. I have, with my experience as consultant and advisor to many European countries, I review many of these European proposals. Typically, every young scientist coming into a career has an ERC grant, which is millions of dollars to get their career launched. We don't have that in Armenia. We don't have the possibility to give the young starting scientists, for example, money to build a lab, to buy the equipment. We're very short of equipment, and now the State Science Council is trying to remedy that situation. But then there are rules of the country about purchasing scientific equipment, which is complicated. But we're really moving ahead with a lot of things. I'm creating infrastructure at Alikhanyan, the experimental infrastructure which has been missing for the last 30 years. Basically everything that was there decayed away, and stuff which wasn't there needed to be there. So now we have the cyclotron is working. That's a facility you can run experiments. We have a linear accelerator from the old days that can be used. We have just finished construction of a 1,000 class clean room at Alikhanyan. We're starting to develop an advanced detector laboratory. We have applied for several grants for developing detectors. As you know, an economy of a country depends on new technologies that that country can bring to market. And for those new technologies, you need the background science. So there's a lot of possibilities. We have applied for lots of grants now. And for example, one aspect is developing small detectors for PET imaging, positron emission tomography. That could change the face of Armenian science and technology and pharmacy and medicine. So these are all new directions. They need a bit of work. They're not something that's going to go to market next year, maybe in 3 years, but it can have a huge impact on the economy of the country.
We tend to compare sometimes old times with modern times. So during the Soviet Union, we used to say that Armenia was booming in terms of science and in terms of physicists and in biology and chemistry. And now we have a huge decrease of resources in that domain. So I wanted to ask you, do we lack smart people, or do we have enough resources, we just don't know how to use it?
We have enormous resources in Armenia and our people. They're very smart. Actually, what I say is we have diamonds everywhere, but they're covered with dust. They're covered in older institutes, and some of them are doing fantastic work. But the number one characteristic of a successful post-Soviet country is internal collaboration between the different areas of science. And that is just starting in Armenia now. I think we are realizing that that's happening. So I think nothing is in our way right now. We just have to believe in it. I think there's a lot of depression for having lost the war. There is a feeling of fatalism about we don't have this, we don't have that. But the minute you make progress, I see that spark in the eyes of our young people, and people want to come, they want to work. An example is that we held an international conference a few months ago now, and we didn't think we had enough people for the conference, and we asked for volunteers, and over 80 volunteers came to us. These are just kids in Armenia doing different things. Some were already in university, in the medical university, in the law university. They just came to help. That already tells me that this whole concept of volunteering has changed. This idea that together we're going to do things has changed. And that gives me a lot of hope and excitement.
In the field of research and development, we talk a lot about the fact that the government has to make some financial efforts to help these fields to boost. Do you have also some contacts, or do you talk or do you collaborate with the government to know how to exactly develop the field of research and development in Armenia?
Yeah, to be honest, Ani, no one in the government of Armenia or in the State Science Committee has asked my opinion about anything. I have over 30 years of experience in science management. I've done a lot of things in a lot of countries. I've worked in over 25 countries. So it's interesting that no one in Armenia asks me how to do anything. But within the Institute, I'm pushing ahead on the new frontiers. So I'm making as much progress as possible. We have a number of international grants already. We managed, as soon as the cyclotron was working, we got a big grant from the UK. We have a lot of grants from ISTC. We have Volkswagen grants. Alikhanyan is doing very well. We have MOUs with over 50 countries. We're in all the big projects, but that's not enough. For us to do something, to actually take advantage of all that science that we have to do things here in Armenia. And that requires taking applications of the science that we have, whether it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, detector development, nuclear physics, nuclear astrophysics, high energy physics. We have to take those applications to our economy so that the economy of this country can improve. So there are lots of new directions that are possible now, Even Armenia's greatest contribution to the GDP is from agriculture. But in agriculture, there's very little use of modern technologies. We don't use GPS, we don't look at what the conditions are, and now with the cyclotron working, we could really speed up the way we grow things in Armenia, the way we preserve things. There's so many directions possible now that weren't possible before.
Mm-hmm. So you talked 3-4 times about this famous cyclotron, but I think that people who are watching this don't know much about this. So could you tell us more about that, and what do you expect from this?
Yeah, the long story is that the cyclotron was suggested by the Science Advisory Board to Yerevan Physics Institute over 10 years ago. The government of Armenia went ahead and purchased it, and it was put together but not being used, which is the main reason that I came to Armenia. I couldn't understand how we bought this and we're not using it. So now we're using it, but yeah, it is an accelerator. It accelerates particles. So in our case, it accelerates protons. So we put the protons on targets and we make different reactions, nuclear reactions, and we can make radioactive isotopes, which were enormously helpful during the pandemic because all the borders were closed. And in Armenia, you could have the isotopes and do the imaging with PET, which would not have been possible for the people of Armenia if that wasn't working. So what does the production of radioactive isotopes do? Radioactive isotopes, they have different lifetimes. They die away in a given way, so 6 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever. But this kind of a machine not only allows some very basic fundamental research in nuclear astrophysics or nuclear physics, looking at reaction cross-sections, but those isotopes can now be used to explore lots of other things. For example, Armenia has a huge pharmaceutical industry, but that industry does not take any benefit from doing imaging with positron emission tomography. If they did, they could double, triple the number of pharmaceuticals that they're producing. In Armenia, we have, the medical school has a brain initiative. One of the big issues with brain is that we don't know how drugs penetrate from the blood-brain barrier. So now in Armenia, we have the machines. We can look at that. We can make tremendous advances there. And we can use the same radioactive isotopes to see how agriculture can be improved. You can try different nutrients, you can try different growing conditions. So there's so many directions, and I'm only talking about the science ones, but there's also directions in studying our cultural heritage. So the University of Notre and Armenia, we're trying now to make some collaboration in that direction. You can use the protons from the cyclotron to study artifacts in Armenia, which are very old, without damaging them, without sending them to Europe, to centers in Paris or Italy to investigate our history. We could do that here. We could explore manuscripts without damaging them. So we don't have those technologies applied in all of the areas that are possible. So in order to do this, we need to develop all the young people to do all this.
That's amazing.
So,
I also read that you said like introducing nuclear medicine can be a game changer for Armenia in terms of cancer. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. You probably know from the World Health Organization that Armenia's deaths per capita from cancer are amongst the very highest. And we don't know what the reason is. Cancers are growing all over the world in every country, but the deaths from cancers are decreasing everywhere else. but not in Armenia. So the question is, what gives Armenians this larger amounts of cancers? Is it our environment? Is it our lifestyle? Is it our genes? Or is it the fact that we don't have early detection? So that opens the question on medical care in Armenia. I know there's a lot of diasporans that come to Armenia. They want to live here for their retirement years. There's a lot of young people that come, but everyone, it's an issue with the health. So what about early detection? In Armenia, what we see is that people, by the time they're diagnosed with cancer, it's too late to do anything about it. So what do the radioactive isotopes give you? They give you a way to do early detection. So that eliminates one of the big questions. If you early detect, you can also early treat. I know that this year the Ministry of Health has made early detection a priority, but that wasn't the case before. But certainly now it's possible. There is only one PET machine in Armenia right now. There can be more. There can be more to do the diagnosis of the body. With the one cyclotron working in Armenia, there will be enough for the entire population of Armenia, plus for export. So the cyclotron is now producing isotopes that they're planning to export to Georgia, for example. So you have the possibilities, and as I said, at Alikhanyan, we're developing new ways to build smaller PET detectors. So you can look at plants, you can look at small animals, you can do all kinds of tests with the smaller setup that's cheaper rather than the multi-million-dollar big imaging facilities.
And then the last question is related to the person you are. You were the only female nuclear physicist at Notre Dame for 27 years, and you became the first woman and the first diaspora Armenian to hold the position of director at the Yerevan Physics Institute. So what place is given to women in the science field at an international scale and in Armenia, and what should be done to encourage women to be more seen in this field?
Well, thank you for the question. This is a very complicated issue. And just today I was invited to a flip physics meeting. Flip meaning it was only women scientists were invited from all over the world to talk about the topics. So I was hired at the University of Notre Dame as the first woman in the entire department. There was one other woman before me, and she was married to another physicist. So I didn't know when they interviewed me and they offered me the job that they were specifically trying to hire a woman within the entire College of Science. So chemistry, biology, math, and physics. So everyone brought forward their candidates, and they offered me the job. I didn't want to accept it because I said, I don't want a woman's job, I want a real job. But it was all the same thing. My advisor really pleaded with me not to turn down the offer. He said, as long as you get there, you just have to show what you're doing. So by the time I came to Armenia, people did say, oh, it's so unusual to have a woman that's the director of this big physics institute. I mean, Alikhanyan is the most highly valued and regarded science laboratory in Armenia. But I hadn't thought about all of that. It was only after I came that my father kept reminding me. He said, in Armenia, they don't listen to women. No one's going to listen to you. But I think I've persuaded my colleagues that what I have to say might be valuable, and now we have a good working relationship, although it wasn't that way to start. So what to do to encourage women more? The best thing, and I had written an article about it in Physics Today journal. I said women are interested in the same things that men are. We're interested in science. We want to know how the universe works. Often women leave science for different reasons. So a young scientist recently spoke to me about how do you balance your personal life with doing the science dedication. So that's a question for every woman, and there's a lot of global statistics. It shows that men, when they start their careers, they kind of increase in their publication, productivity, and good ideas until about mid-40s. Whereas women who are having children maybe in their 30s or earlier, they're sort of slow, and then after their children are grown, they continue to grow. They continue to produce. So I think it's just a matter of giving women the opportunity. I have been amazed with the women in Armenia. It just seems like when you want something done, you want to hand it to a woman. And I am comforted by knowing who's in charge. So it's amazing that people believe that it's men in charge, but it's really the women that are running Armenia. I can't say the same thing for the US. I cannot. Although during my tenure as a professor, I really changed that scene. So I changed it at the university. There would typically be one woman in every class that was entering. And now there's like 30%, and the graduate students were like less than 10%, and now there's like 35%. It can be just to show that it's possible to be fashionable. Now I've gotten gray, but I like to dress nice. I like to have my nails done. I like jewelry. So it can be, my women professors were very few. I think I had one. And I didn't want to be like that. I'm hoping that we can show young women that you can have an exciting life and like all the same things you want to do and do great science.
So they need to trust themselves?
The confidence is a big issue. And I would say even when I started, I was always apologizing. I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand this, I can't do this. And actually it was one of my senior colleagues pulled me aside and said, why are you apologizing all the time? So this is a thing with women. They have to learn to trust themselves. They have to learn to value what they're doing. And like I said, in Armenia, women are doing incredible things, but they think it's not a big deal. They think this is normal. I am supposed to do all these things. So I would like to tell my Armenian sisters that they're doing an amazing job.
Well, thank you very much for this talk, and thank you for watching, and continue to follow CivilNet.